Hello, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mark Grist. This is We the Poets Season 2.
Yeah, Season 2.
Thank you so much for joining us. You are so welcome to be here. If you're interested in learning more about poetry, whether you write it yourself or you're interested in listening to some poetry, just finding out what's going on in the UK scene, we've got you covered. We've got 5 of us here in the room at the moment. 5.
Whoa, we're like the band 5.
They've returned. My wife's got tickets.
Yes. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. We are going to make you grab you by your biscuits. We're going to be listening to some amazing poets who are going to join us, and we're going to kind of write some things based on it. I think maybe if we start off and go around the room. So, my name is Mark Grist. I am a poet. I used to not feel I could say that because it's felt like a heavy word, but it's not anymore. I guess I've had enough bad gigs that I think like...
Yeah, you've earned it.
Yeah, you get to kind of carry on with it.
Yeah.
I kind of I write and perform stuff. I work in schools a lot. I used to do some rap battling, and I'm based in Peterborough, where a few of us are. And I'm just really excited that we've got this series coming together. Anyone else? Who are you?
My name's Sandhu. I will say I'm a poet because I am most of the week. But then I love getting involved in all of the sorts of different types of creativity. Like I'm learning to draw at the minute, like getting involved in music and bits and bobs like this. And I think if I had a choice, I think I'd just be like I'm a storyteller. Like I don't really care what the medium is. I just want to tell stories.
And you work with music as well, right?
Yeah, and just finding different mediums of different ways to tell stories, whether it's like poetry, music, graphic novels, like whatever it might be. And I'm from Nottingham. And I try and vary the bits that I do and the creativity stuff that I do because I've got ADHD. It really helps me to like bounce around creative fields because it means that like that part of my brain can be itched constantly without needing to.
Do you get that hyper focus when you're working on something?
Sometimes dangerously so. Mark, I have been sat trying to find the right hi-hat for well over an hour and a half before, and I don't know if you've listened to 2,000 hi-hats, but by that point they all sound the same and none of it matters, and then it gets really frustrating when you find the perfect one you was looking for, apply the effects, then your cat jumps on your laptop and deletes the sound, and then I never found it again. So sometimes the hyperfocus isn't a good thing. But sometimes it's beautiful because it helps me create something that I really, really want to create.
Should we go round? I'll happily go next. I am Charley Genever. Pronouns are she, her. I'm a poet. I'm trying to think about what's happened in the last year since I introduced myself for season 1. Because there's been quite a lot. I've done loads of schools bookings and projects with young people, which has been really exciting. I think I talked in the intro episode about my show, which I'm still working on as well, which is really exciting, called Mind Run Wild. It's now a full show. I've written the full script, which is really exciting.
I saw you're looking for an actor, right?
Yeah, I am looking for a fictional prime minister, cis white man between the ages of 40 and 65. If you're listening, get in touch. So it's the first time I've ever written something where I'm then casting someone else. So this is going to be really exciting. I think particularly because it's really political and it's going to make people very uncomfortable with what I do with said Prime Minister on stage. That's been really
exciting.
Fun. Yeah, that's been really fun to work on. And I think genuinely, I don't know that I'd have kept the motivation and the momentum to continue with it if I hadn't kind of made myself accountable on the series by talking about it in the first place. So that's been really nice.
I think there's mad power to that. Do you know when you tell someone about a crazy plan and then because you've put it out in the world, it always feels like it's more likely to happen because you kind of put it out, doesn't it?
I get
absolutely. That. Yeah, I like that.
That's cool.
Hello, my name is Keely Mills. I normally do my voice notes. I always go, it is I, Keely Mills. I'm also a poet, and I'm saying it straight because you've all kind of gone, and I would say kind of creative practitioner, is that still a phrase? But within that, like producing. So I'm very interested in kind of producing events as well. And at the moment, I'm also the chair of Syntax Poetry, and we look after the Peterborough Poet Laureate role. So I've been heavily involved in that this year. I gave up one of my jobs, so I'm rattling into destitution. But from that, it means at the same time, I'm grabbing every poetry commission, poetry thing that I can get going. And at the moment, I'm starting to get quite a few things in. And then I'm hoping that sometime I'll sit down and actually develop something for myself. Yeah, and I wasn't there a year ago. A year ago, you were all talking about stuff, and I was like, I did some poems once. So it feels like, so that's pretty much where I'm at.
Okay, how about me? So my name's Leanne Moden. I'm also a poet.
Yes.
I think that's happening to us all around the table. I'm a poet, performer, playwright now is my new thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So last year I had an R&D on a piece of work that I had written. We got actors and a director in the room to like mess about with it and deconstruct it and build it back up again. And hopefully this year, if we get the funding, we'll do some rural touring, because it's a piece about rural stories, because I'm based in Nottingham, but I'm originally from Wisbech.
I know,
baby.
Wisbech.
So yes, I'm really interested in thinking about rural experiences and how those don't get a lot of airing in mainstream conversations. So to have those stories be talked about and be heard is kind of the kick I'm on right now.
How much of your job, I suppose, do you feel is like the poetry and how much is other stuff? Because I had someone say to me the other day, because technically I'm full-time. I've been doing it for like 13 years now since I left teaching to do this. Someone was like, they were like, you're not really a poet, you're a service provider. And I was like, I know, it was a head teacher. And I was like, they were like, you need to be a bit more professional.
Name and number, please, and the dress.
I was like, what, do I need to be professional? I'm a poet, I'm just writing poems and enjoy. And they were like, no, to me, you're a service provider. And I was like,
whoa.
Oh, I guess I am. Because probably about 60% of my income, I suppose, comes from schools, right? Visiting schools, which I love because I used to be a teacher. But I guess I quite enjoy that I write poems, but I also spend a lot of my time kind of workshopping and helping other people with that. And Keely, you've been like, a lot of your job role has been producer, right? And kind of doing those things as well. So we're not just bringing, I suppose, to the show, the fact that we write and perform poems, but we're kind of interested in other parts of the infrastructure as well. Does that make sense?
Can I just say that you're not a poet, you're a service provider. It's possibly one of the best bars I've ever heard. I think that this head teacher wants to battle rap you is what I'm hearing there. I feel like that's, do you know what I mean? Like,
I told someone else about this and they were like, I want you to do a training session on how to be a service provider for poets. And I was like, that's quite funny. Like, I think, but in a way, I was like, oh, I guess I kind of am. Like, different people view you as different things, right? So yeah, I thought it was kind of funny.
I think in that precise moment, it's more about him or them. I assume it's a him than it is about you. And you just literally are a mirror reflecting back at them what they think.
It was a woman, actually. It was a
woman?
It was a lady.
Even worse. Like, I want the address. I'm still good at kneecapping. Let's go. Let's do this. No, I'm only joking.
Are we like semi full-time? We're kind of like freelancers in the room. Is that what we are?
I was full-time for ages, and I was making good progress in the amount I was earning. And then it came to renewing my mortgage, and they said, because my income has increased by a significant amount for 3 years, it means my income is not stable, so I cannot get a mortgage.
What?
When if my income hadn't increased year on year, it would show stability, and therefore I'd be able to get a remortgage. So I ended up having to go back to teaching because they don't believe that creatives can make money and pay a mortgage. And I'm like half and half at the minute. I'm really like trying to figure out where that is, because like a lot, like both require a lot of energy, don't they? Like a lot of like different types of energy as well. And like I don't know how long I'd be able to do both of them for. But yeah, that's where I'm kind of at, kind of like floating in that middle ground bit.
When we went to move house, we applied for a mortgage and Lucy was able to get like X amount because she works full time. Me added to the mortgage application, we got to increase what we could borrow by £5,000. That's what I brought to the mix. So yeah, downstairs toilet's mine.
Oh,
Got a square meter in the garden. Like.
Yeah, that's about it. That's about how big it is as well.
I'm a massive overachiever, so I do have a full-time job and then do all the poetry stuff,
Wow,
somehow fit
that's
it in.
amazing.
And tutors. And
yeah,
you tutor
and
as
do a
well.
bit of tutoring. Yeah.
What'd you do?
So I work for a community arts organisation called Peterborough Presents. Me and Keely both do.
They're banging.
They're wicked as community producers. So for anyone listening that knows of Arts Council's Creative People and Places programme, we're Peterborough's version of that, basically. And so I just make creative projects happen in certain neighbourhoods around Peterborough, and it's so much fun, so much fun.
Yeah, Charlie just did filming like 2 weeks ago with 150 people from Millfield.
Yeah.
Just dropping that in.
Yeah.
Just dropping that in.
I still love the dog walking thing you did.
Yeah, that was my favourite project, West Woof. Yeah, we basically commissioned the local tattoo artists to turn portraits of people's dogs, turn photos of people's dogs into portraits, and then we had like a pop-up gallery and a dog walk, and then I just got to say hello to like 60 dogs throughout the day. It was wicked. But I don't think I wouldn't have met Keely if not for being part of Peterborough Presents, and I think I'm feeling the burn right now of having so much on because I'm getting more established, I'm getting more stuff come through. This month I'm working in like schools every week, so my Fridays are booked off from Peterborough Presents so that I can do them all, but I don't think I'd have it any other way because I can still provide opportunities outside of poetry for other people to get involved in creative stuff and the ripple effect of that, and then do my own stuff as well and have the agency to do my own stuff.
So I've been really proud of Charlie because I would say in the last year, more so than any other, you've actually been doing creative stuff for yourself. So the show and everything is for you on top of everything else that you're doing, which is amazing. So yeah.
It's one thing that I don't know if you guys like Leanne probably know Bridie Squires, like from Knots, does like Big Poet in Knots, like one of the ones that got me into it all. She said even when you're doing all this organisational big stuff, helping other people, she was like you have to make sure that you're still focusing on your own creativity, which like you said, you know, when you're like in between commissions and projects and producing stuff, it's really hard to just be like, I'm gonna write for fun. Like,
just one project a year. If you make sure you have, I've always been like, have one project a year that's for you, and you're doing it for you because you want to do it.
Well, this series should hopefully give us all a chance to do a bit of writing as well, which would be really, really cool. Keely, what about you? I guess you're moving more into the freelancer role.
Yeah,
now.
I'm moving more into the destitute bohemian looking thing.
The water's lovely.
It's lovely. It's lovely over here. It's been about 6 weeks since the other job I was in for 14 years, and it was really a major part of my identity. So to give up that role, it took an awful lot. But also towards the end, I would say it really was at the detriment of my mental health and my confidence. So at the moment, I'm just in that thing of like, I don't want to take too much on because I don't want to make the wrong decision, and I want to take my time to like re-establish myself. But hopefully I want to do a project around Chubby Mermaid. You know, my Chubby Mermaid
needs to happen.
Jay might not have heard of this. So I'm still poet in residence of the Lido in Peterborough. That's why they wouldn't close it.
Yeah.
I kind of came up with this like a superhero. She's a superhero, which is this chubby mermaid kind of figure. And I've written a long piece about her. And there's a bit of that poem on the ladies' dressing room in the Lido, which says, I'm ancient and I'm beautiful. So that's what people read as before they go in. And I think at some point I'd like to do something about that. But I don't know what. Maybe a podcast?
Ooh, nice.
Yes.
Setting up a rival podcast.
Yes. Oh, yes. Don't worry, Chris.
Drag our 60 listeners over.
To this podcast.
Yeah. Leanne,
Yeah, so I've been doing poetry projects since about 2012.
Okay.
But I only went full-time freelance in 2023. So it was like such a gradual like progression of having a full-time job and spending all my holidays doing poetry and then getting a part-time job and spending the other 2 days a week doing poetry and then getting a different part-time job and spending the other 3 days a week doing poetry. And then eventually I thought, do you know what? Maybe it's time to like put my money where my mouth is, you know?
Yeah.
And it's been 2 years and touch wood, it's going okay. So
That's wicked.
Going better than okay.
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. If you're listening right now, maybe you've got some questions you want to ask us this series about anything we're doing, or maybe there's a challenge that you're facing or you're struggling with. We would love to hear about it. You can email us at mark@wethepoets.com. If you want to ask any questions during the series, we're all going to be popping on and we can chat about those things. If there's something that you're kind of focusing on or you're finding our conversation so far has kind of got an idea, send through questions. We would love to have those as discussion points.
If we get enough, we can have like a little agony aunt section. I would love that.
We will give really bad advice. We have not made great life choices. So.
Can I also say, we're also available for commissions, workshops.
Wink, wink.
All right, so I've got a question.
Oh God.
Sorry.
All right, it's about what we do well and we do badly as poets. So if you yourself as a poet have a superpower, is there something that you're like really good at, and what is your like super weakness? Oh, it feels really arrogant to say that you've got a power, doesn't it?
No.
No?
Everybody's got power. I don't think it's arrogant to say what power you've got or the thing that you're good at.
You unique, yeah.
Yeah.
Different.
I also think it's good for you to be bigging yourself up as well. Like, I don't think enough people do that.
So what is your superpower, Mark? A power.
I feel like I really like rhyming.
Yeah.
Like I just really enjoy rhyming, and I really enjoy multisyllabic rhyme and playing around with it. I can still get better at it, but I love to rhyme. But if I ever try and write a poem and it doesn't rhyme, it's like suddenly I've just had all of my powers removed. I have no idea how to write the poem. I don't even know what a poem is anymore. I'm like maybe some repetition can help me out. But terrifies me, the thought of writing poems about rhymes. So yeah, for me, I guess it feels like I'm in my superhero form when I'm rhyming. If I'm not rhyming, nah.
Yeah.
I don't
bad.
think that's your superpower.
Ooh.
Controversial.
Yeah, but I think we'll come on to that. I don't think that's your superpower.
Okay,
when it comes
Leanne,
to
what do you
poetry.
think?
Wow. So I think my superpower is sort of similar. I think I'm like, if I get stuck for a poem, I always revert back to form. So if that's rhyme or like structure or like syllable count or something like that, I feel very comfortable in like poem as puzzle. You know, if I've already got the structure, the scaffold of having to write a villanelle or having to write a sonnet or having to write something like that, that then gives me the freedom to then say what I mean. If you see what I mean?
Yes, yeah. That's similar to me though with the rhyme though. You've kind of signed a contract, which means you won't have full control over what you say. Just like me, I go like, I'm going to let the rhyme shape how it comes out.
Yeah, it's
and
the
you've got to get
surprise of the poem.
Yeah,
I think,
and
really
the structure in the game of it.
Yeah, it's 100%.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I really like when you can get a really niche rhyme. I think once I rhymed Zapdos, as in like the Pokemon Zapdos card with grandiose or something along the lines of that. And it was like, and my mate heard it and he was like, bro, what was that? And I was like, I'm really interested. Yeah.
Have you written many Pokemon rhymes?
If I had to say like my like thing that I do well is, I think it was like a Childish Gambino line that made me think about it. Everything I write is just like things that I like to reference, and so there's so much nerdy stuff in what I say. I've written this whole thing and it's basically all about comic books. And then I've done the poem and there's a bit in it where I'm talking about the Flash and this and the Reverse Flash and the yellow, the colours and this and that. The person came up to me at the end and was like, I really like the political statement you was making. And I was going, yeah, which one? Like, because I do make political statements. And the line he picked up was me talking about red versus yellow blur, and he thought I was on about Labour and Lib Dem. And my brother was next to me and I had to just go, yeah, man, that's, yeah. And that's when I kind of realised that I can do my nerd stuff and make it as I want it. And there might be 2 people in the world that clock all of the references, but then people find what they find from it. And like, if I'm talking about something serious, I can add a stupid joke in. And even if I know, like, I've got some poems where a joke in it is for like 5% of the audience.
Okay.
Like, I'm aware it's for 5% of the audience, and I will always do it because the 5% find it hilarious, and as do I.
Yeah.
And the rest of the room don't have a clue what I'm talking about.
Charlie, what about you?
Oh, I think I've got one I can control and one I can't control.
Oh, I like it.
So I think what I like to do is, I think I'm good at making people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I love it.
And playing with really visceral, meaty, gross imagery that makes people feel gross or control how I want them to feel throughout the journey of a poem. And then I love subversion and flipping stuff on its head. I like to challenge people's thought processes or stick up for the underrepresented in some way. I find I can do that best when I'm being really visceral in the language use and the imagery and the metaphor. And then the thing I can't control is my stomach grumbles, which are already going off in the middle of this podcast recording. I don't know if Chris is picking it up.
I think for me, maybe my power is platforming the mundane and the everyday. So I will take something out of someone's landscape or life and I'll platform it in a way. So for instance, I've written a poem recently about Stamford, very posh town, but the things that I've written within that poem are actually things that people that live there day to day will find really good. And then I went and performed it at this great event called Cheer Club. And it was one line, and it's like, I use a lot of repetition, so it's a Harrison and Dunn town, and this is like a hardware shop that if you live in Stamford, you know it, and it's the most amazing shop in the world. I take things that are mundane or everyday, and I put it in a poem and make it quite, and for some reason that enables people to connect to it, and I go very local, so I quite like making the ordinary extraordinary. And I think also I'm really good at internal rhymes without even trying. Sometimes I'll finish a line and go, oh, it's got 2 little internal rhymes in that. How did I do that? I'll be like, whether it's the repetition, I like a lot of repetition. I just did it then.
Do you know what I was thinking about earlier as well? I don't know, I presume you all do this, but like, I've got a bad tooth at the minute and I went and got an x-ray yesterday, and the dentist described it as a massive cavity, and I just love that phrase, so I've been holding on to that phrase ready to use it for a poem.
That's a collection title, isn't it?
Yeah. But like weird phrases that you hear or read that you just connect with in a really deep way, and then can plagiarise and put into your own work, and no one will know.
I've had to literally, I have a note in my phone of just random bars of just random lines, 2 words like that, and then I've ended up setting my watch up so that in 2 clicks I can voice record. So whenever I have a moment like that where I'm like,
that's a good idea,
that was interesting, I'm like, bang, and I have to talk it, because sometimes I'll be in like a social situation and someone will say something that I'm like my mate, what did my mate say the other day? He goes, Jay, you're just a mango in a sea of apples, aren't you? And I just went,
that's amazing.
I was like, where has that come from? And I was like, can I have that? He was like, have what? What are you talking about? He'd like immediately forgotten he'd even said anything. Yeah. And I was like, 1 sec. And then I had to record it. And he's like, is that what I said? I was like, yes, it is. I know what you mean.
Plus, you get to look like you're a Mission Impossible as well as you do. Which is
like on Power Rangers or something.
Jay's in espionage. But I've recaptured a superpower recently. Because you know that when we first met, Mark, all those years ago, when we first met, like I used to be the queen of like writing a poem half an hour before I went on, and people would be like, really effed off with me is the best way of putting it. And I lost that because I became so like worried. And then recently, about 2 weeks ago, I was asked to write a poem about a certain area as part of a project, and I wanted to write a ghost poem. And I thought, I really want to do it. And I kept putting it off. And then I wrote it half an hour beforehand. And I started doing that again, started to be able to just write it on the hoof again. And they're actually quite good.
Yeah.
You know, but I lost that ability because I think I lost the ability to just enjoy writing and just to go for it rather than worrying about it too much.
Yeah, it's easy to get in your own head, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially if if you're known as a poet,
Yeah.
then there's like a certain standard that you kind of in your head feel you have to meet.
Yeah.
And really all it is that you have to just write a poem.
Yeah.
So probably like the business side of things.
Yeah,
you think?
definitely business side of things like that. Yeah,
That side of things is kind of important, isn't it? I think sometimes we don't, maybe in poetry, don't celebrate that. Like I think like Scroobius Pip's a good example of like,
Oh.
if there was a bar chart for
Yeah.
your skills as a poet, there's one that's like on branding and identity and everything else, and he's got that like nailed. And like that was kind of, yeah, I think sometimes we could learn a bit from like appreciating some of these other things that someone has to do, the hustle and everything else.
Yeah. And like the Joel Taylors of the world that support everyone else before they get their flowers.
Yeah.
That's what I said. I think your superpower is not. I think you're like. I think you taught me a really valuable lesson earlier on. Like I think when I might have become a bit of a dickhead around poetry and been very much like, oh, they're not very good, and you were like, no, that is a poem. And that's why I was thinking, like when you were saying about, you know, your very famous poem is still a effing poem, you know, like you're very good at like evening the field and just being like, no, it's all relevant, it's all cool, you know, it's like, and I think that is your superpower, one of them.
And they call me the carpet. What's the worst poem you've ever written? Or the worst title, or the worst... Is there anything that you think about and you go like, that was pretty bad?
Does it have to be a poem?
It doesn't have to be a poem, no?
So on my hard drive, I found my... it's not that kind of podcast, is it? I can get charged for that now anyway. When I was looking through this hard drive, I found my very, very early attempts at making music and like mixing stuff. And I'm talking like this was on like a maybe mid 2000s on a cracked version of Fruity Loops. And I listened to it, and when I mean it was so bad and it hurt my it felt like I'd let hip hop down completely. And I
Can
went
you
and
remember any lines?
No, I wasn't even on it. It was me just trying to make the sounds and take verses from other rappers and put them together and trying to figure out bits and then leave gaps for myself. And I remember talking to my producer and he's like, you need to show it to me. And I was like, I can't. Like, I literally can't. So I've thought about going back and redoing them properly to like heal the 15-year-old me that made this music with no help that was absolutely terrible. But I'd probably say that was the worst thing that I've ever created.
And you've not shared them with anyone else?
No. And I don't know if I ever will, because they are just terrible. Like they're just embarrassingly bad. But like, yeah.
Yeah, but you probably release it and everybody really loves it.
No, like the beats don't match, the way I've laid them on aren't correct. Like it just like listening now, it just sounds wrong. Like you listen back to it and you're like going, what was I doing? Did I have ears at that point? Like what was happening?
When I was younger, my parents took us to America. It was like the biggest holiday we'd ever had. We went over 2 weeks, and they wanted like second day, we're going to go to a beach and we're going to go and walk along the beach and like pick up some shells and stuff like that. Your mum really wants to do it. And I went along with them and I wrote a poem about that beach walk. And the first words of the poem were sick bastards. That's how I started the poem. I was like, I thought it was so clever because I was like, they're not even shells, not they're like dead remains of stuff and everything else. And I wrote this whole poem about them. And it was
so emo.
So emo. And I was so convinced it was brilliant. And I got back and I saw it again a few years later. And I think maybe I could recite it over your beats.
Yeah. That sounds good. We'll do that.
We should have a bad episode.
Yeah,
what we think is all
bad.
bad.
It was bad. Anyone else?
Oh, I've got one that I feel is really cringe, and I won't even look back at it. It was called The New Poets Manifesto, and it was just me trying too hard because it was just my entry point. Like I was doing some work experience with Apples and Snakes, and they'd kind of tasked me to write a poem. And then I'd seen Vanessa Kasule's manifesto poem. I can't remember the title of it.
Yeah, it's a great poem,
yeah, really great poem. And then it was just me kind of figuring out all the different techniques that you see about what wins slams, all that kind of stuff, and put it all into this one poem. And it was a list poem, and it was just so cringe. I remember like shading out Nicki Minaj. And it just had all these really cringe tropes about what I thought a new poet was at that time. And yeah, it was just really cringe. Really,
New
really
Poet
cringe.
Manifesto.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I deleted it recently from YouTube.
Like it was up.
Oh,
It
was up?
It was up.
up.
It was
Did you get
up.
any?
I don't remember. I don't think so. I got a very supportive well done from the Apples and Snakes team. But it was, a load of crap.
Oh, it was nice. Apples and Snakes were positive though.
Yeah.
It feels like they were
Justified the
contractually
funding there.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think I've got notebooks of 13, 14-year-old poetry that shouldn't be looked at. But we were joking because I've always said about the poem that ended up on the bridge is not my favourite poem that I've ever written. But it's also the poem that, I was asked to write a poem about buildings in Peterborough. Yeah, I can tell by your face you're excited. And, and it's called Buildings in Need, I think. And people really like architecture, I found out. So they really enjoy the poem, but I don't think I've ever performed it since. And then I also got like a Californian professor contact me and asked me if I had permission to put that poem into like his thesis or something. It's a poem that I don't necessarily like or I'm not happy with, but other people seem to like it. I have to embrace the love for that poem, and so I embrace it. Yeah.
Nice. I think it was like 2014, 2015. I entered the anti-slam. I don't know if you've come across anti-slams, but the idea is that it's like a slam, but the worst poem wins.
Yeah.
And I think my poem had dolphin noises in it, if I remember correctly.
Oh my
Which is
gosh.
very exciting.
I feel like we're going to need a...
I
we need
don't
this.
remember. I can't do it off the top of my head, but I came second, and the guy who won was also the UK slam champion. So he was the best and worst poet
Wow.
in the country.
accolade.
And I spent the whole year saying to people, I am the second worst poet in the UK. I'm really dining out on that.
Yeah. People like that. They either like you to be the best or the worst, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can anyone do a dolphin impression?
No.
People sound like we're wheezing.
I can't roll my R's either.
Can you not?
Nah.
I can't say TH is so all good. Do you know what I mean? It's fine.
How important do you reckon it is for like poets, like new and experienced, to write bad stuff?
So important.
Yeah.
Like I see
Yeah.
so many like new poets being like, I can't write that, it's bad. And I'm like, just write it, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's-
We were quite lucky, I think, because when we were younger, there was no way to share it online and stuff. So we all wrote the stuff and we get to keep it hidden.
See, I only started writing in lockdown. That was when I
really?
wrote my
Okay.
first thing
Yeah.
ever. Like,
Really?
that was the first poem I wrote was in lockdown.
Oh, wow.
And I'd had like bits of creativity before it, but because none of my mates did any of that, I just didn't, like, again, with the worst track in the world, I had nobody to be like, no, Jay, this is music theory and how you make a song. I started late, so I like, you know, you lot
That's a
saying
good
like
result,
from like
man.
10, 12
Most
years
people
ago.
just made banana bread and got
like-
really sad. So
Yeah,
you became a poet.
You
no,
found a career.
it was really interesting when I hear like you guys talk about like, I've had this one from so long ago, and I'm going, my catalogue doesn't go that far back. Like, and I find it really interesting. So like, I wonder if in 5 years' time I'll go back to ones that I was happy with
I think,
at the start
yeah.
and go
Definitely.
thingy with it. And and it just kind of got me thinking how important it is for people to actually.
I think
do
about them
that.
as being a bit like horses that have done a lot of work and they just get to go out to pasture. Do you know what I mean? Like, even if they're like bad,
That's a good-
Round the
that's-
I'm just like, you know,
I didn't know where you was
at
gonna go
some
with
point
that
you were very
analogy.
important.
no,
You-
right, round the back of the
but now
shed.
it's like, yeah, no.
Have you thought about
chill
doing
out, chill out,
poetry with that
poem. You did your
analogy?
thing. You're not perfect, but you did all right, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose like that would have been what you needed it to be at the time you wrote it, wouldn't it? Like,
Yeah,
Well, it might be a bad poem, but it's all good practice, isn't it? So that's the thing, really. Is like you need the stepping stones of the bad poems in order to get you
Yeah,
to a place where you
exactly.
can be like, actually, this one's good.
and really asking yourself why is it
Yeah.
bad, not just seeing the whole thing, but what techniques have you used that have made it bad, or what voice are you trying to create that have made it bad.
you're just a diamond, a really, really rough diamond, and you just got to keep polishing it. You keep polishing it and keep polishing it. But then sometimes I look back at stuff that I wrote when I was 13 and 14 and go, yeah, you're onto something. You're onto something because it's really raw or it's really
sometimes
visceral.
it does, doesn't it?
Or it hits something. And I think, well, no, that's also really
Plus,
good.
I cringe at my old statuses on Facebook and stuff. When sometimes when they come up then, I'm like, oh, geez, I was horrendous 10 years ago or whatever. So I just think everyone cringes at themselves when they're young.
I have to remind myself, like, the phrase, like, it's era appropriate. Like, do you know when stuff that I've written and it's popped up on like stories and it's been like, oh, I actually put that online. I actually said that. What? But actually, at the time, that was completely normal.
Yeah.
Do you know what
It's
I
like
mean?
haircuts, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah.
10 years' time, all our haircuts will be, maybe not yours. Yours is timeless.
So season 2, this series, what are we looking forward to? We've got 4 poet guests coming in we get to chat with. We've got Theresa Lola, then we've got Hollie McNish, then we've got Murray Lachlan Young, and then we've got Ray Antrobus as well.
Selection.
I know.
Insane,
Really
insane.
exciting.
Yeah, so very excited to chat with those guys. What are you guys looking forward to, or what are you hoping to get out of the series?
My favourite thing to do from the last series was to listen to the episodes that I wasn't involved in, because it was like having that conversation without having to have the conversation. Do you know what I mean? You were just like listening to all these like really wise and interesting people talk about stuff that they're really passionate about. I love that.
I'm excited about getting to know Jay as well, a new person on the team. I think more of the same, but I feel like this time we might dig down a little bit deeper with some of the poets and their work. And I feel like some of the poets also aren't necessarily traditional. They kind of move in different areas as well. I'm quite excited about that.
Yeah, I would echo that, definitely. For season 1, I ended up, because I was so inspired, writing a poem after every episode anyway. So I'm looking forward to getting paid to do that this time. But
Truth that.
Thank you,
yes,
Arts Council
thank you,
England.
Arts Council England. But no, I think, similar to what Keely said, like, I think the guests that we've got all kind of challenge what average person thinks when they hear the word poetry. So I'm really excited to kind of continue that conversation and put a spotlight on loads of incredible people.
Yeah.
I think for me as well, like, I just love being in conversations with creatives, like, because I think when you're in conversation with, especially like storytellers or creatives, it don't matter what their medium is, they've always got like a really interesting angle on stuff that you might not have ever thought about. And then also along with that, like, when I'm chatting to creative people, my brain ends up coming up with ideas for projects or pieces or collaborative work, and I'm like going, if I never had that conversation, like if we were never chilling in Shambhala, there's loads of things that I've kind of figured out and I've got half written out for plans that I'm like, when I finish this, I need to tell Mark about this. But it wouldn't have happened if we didn't just have
so
that
me and Jay
downtime,
bumped
if
into
you know
each
what I
other
mean.
at Shambhala. We ended up having a curry together, didn't we? And we were just chatting it out. And we realised very quickly, because of our experience teaching, we're both very interested in certain things to do with writing. And so, it's great, isn't it, when you make connections with people and you kind of meet up. And
that's such a core part of continuing being a professional poet. It's so much of it is making those connections and having those good friendships and relationships being built. I mean, you hear that, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But I think it's deeper than that with poets. It's not a transactional thing, I don't think. I think we all genuinely want to get to know each other better and keep building relationships.
I feel like when poetry's in the press, it's normally because of some quite bad behaviour. I think when back in the day, the Poetry Review, there was a big fallout. I remember that getting the press about kind of like a previous editor and stuff there, or about professors from certain universities being particularly unpleasant to each other. Or you get this other article, which is like, this is the new rock and roll of poetry kind of thing, which again kind of, I think, puts people's backs up. It's always kind of playing off parts of the poetry community against each other in some ways. And I feel like sometimes we think of poetry as being this kind of amazing thing that brings people together, but it feels like the media often, I think, wants to present poets as being quite petty and small and falling out. I think that's what often comes out. So I feel like for me, this series to be showing what we can get from listening to each other and like coming together a bit and being a bit more curious about each other's work. We want to be this kind of little oasis where if you're in any way kind of poetry curious and interested in it, join us, and we're going to be celebrating all the different ways we can be kind of playing around with words.
I find it really interesting how the media portrays poetry. Like I went to see Lachlan Connor not too long ago.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he literally did half of his set was just spoken word. And I was there with my brother, and it was the first time he supports me doing the nonsense that I do. But we was there, and he turned around at halfway through the set and he went, I get it. I get what you're doing, and I get why you're doing it, how you're doing it. And it was just insane to see someone headlining a festival that is a rapper, and then he chose to do half of his set with no backing, with just him doing spoken word, and the whole audience were just like, you can't see that, this is a podcast, jaw like all over the floor. And it was really interesting being in that audience of seeing people connect with the poetry with it. Then I always think that's someone that's basically put 15, 20,000 people onto poetry because he decided, I've got a space to do this, so I'm going to do it how I want to do it.
And the importance of like grassroots spaces to be able to try that, to get to that stage. I have a great Lachlan Connor story, which weirdly someone reminded me of on LinkedIn of all places. So like back when I was doing some work experience at Cambridge Junction, Daniel Pitt, who was the theatre and spoken word producer, gave me a little bit of money to put on my own poetry night, and I'd booked Lachlan Connor as the headliner.
When was that?
2015.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. And my whole premise with it was poetry collaboration, so duet. So everyone on the night, I can't remember what collective I had. I had one of the London collectives as well do kind of host it as a trio. But then Laura was the headliner at that time. And yeah, because people didn't necessarily know of him at that time, there was like 30 people in the audience, if that, and the night made a loss. Thankful to Cambridge Junction for letting me test that out. But like to just know the journey that he's gone on and how he's now headlining Glastonbury, like it's so inspiring to know that can be a journey for people.
Do you know, I think it's mad as well with like so when I do events and stuff, I have this big thing where like sometimes people run poetry events that are just for poets. Cool, not a problem. But then they seem to complain about audiences never growing and doing this. And I think doing things like that, bringing on poetry adjacent people to do stuff, is how you drag non-poetry people into the room. Like I remember doing a gig and I bought the football lads. And they were like, oh, poetry, can I drink there? Yeah, of course you can, man, that's fine. Yeah, fine. And then getting one of my mates that did like a monologue piece to start the night off, and seeing all the lads at the back of the room slowly just stop drinking their pint and get so absorbed in it. And then by the end of the night, I had all these like typical lads that were like, gee, I didn't realise I was a fan of poetry. Like, I didn't realise that this is what it could be. And I think that's really interesting when people are happy to take that risk of getting someone that's poetry adjacent to do something, and then it ends up making something that's insane.
Yeah.
I feel like poetry it's a very strange word because I think it encompasses so much, and it's a real ancestral thing. Like we are very used to sitting down and listening to a good story around a campfire, around a fire, around the radio, whatever it is. So why would it be any different like now?
True, yeah.
It just happens to be that there'll be people like Lachlan Connor or, I don't know, Kendrick Lamar, whoever, or, you know, or like, you know, performing poetry, and then they go, I didn't know I liked poetry. Well, you probably did. Yeah. It's just that poetry came to you in your own format. Yeah. It's suddenly somebody's just gone to you, this is a poetry night and this is a poet. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That word is heavy, isn't it? It does scare people away. I mean, scare might not be the right word, but it feels like you said, if people were going to like a comedy night and someone was doing some poetry as part of the comedy.
I've been there. That wasn't fun.
It kind of brings people in. I think that for me with this series, the word "we" of our title, "We the Poets," is a really important part of it. And that I think there's so many great comedians and rappers and storytellers who are being poetic, right? Are kind of like thinking about kind of juicing the language a little bit more. And so, I always love having different people on.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because poetry as a title, most people are sort of scared off it at school because like poetry and the way it's taught or the way it's been taught in the past. But I never hear people saying, oh, I didn't like music at school, so now I don't like music.
Yeah.
So what is the difference there?
Because when you're at primary school, I think it's so natural, isn't it? Like, we learn so much in rhyme. We learn through storytelling that, I don't know, when in secondary school, I don't know what happens.
Well, when I work with primary school kids, you go, we're going to write poetry today. They're like, let's go.
This is the mad thing. On the GCSE, English GCSE, in the poetry section, there's no requirement for any pupil to ever write a poem.
Yeah.
So all they're doing is analysing it. Now, I like maths. I'm a nerd, and that's cool. But if I only ever looked at the theory of maths and never got to do any, I wouldn't enjoy it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And also, like, I think poetry's moved so much from when I was at school. What poetry was, it was boring. It wasn't going to hook me. Like when I do a session and I start my session with, is this a Wu-Tang line or a Shakespeare line? And the kids are like, well, that could be what? But that's a hold up. And it's the little things that I think the way that we're hooking young people into it needs to change, because it's been kind of like, I don't know, like given out in a way that is like sometimes feels elitist as well.
And the truth is, it's got probably the lowest barrier to entry of a lot of art forms.
Oh, 100%. It can just... I like poetry to pop up in unusual venues. I can understand why poets like to perform in poetry spaces, apparently, but I'm more interested in performing in spaces that aren't considered poetry, because, you know, that's where you reach people and hit the gold, I think.
Well, guys, we are so excited to have you along for this series. If you've got anything you want to say, if you want to send us a poem, anything we've talked about, if it inspires you, like we said, it's a low barrier to entry. Grab a pen, grab your phone, grab anything you can find.
Your nan.
And scribble something down, send it in to mark@wethepoets.com. You name it, we will listen to it, and we will really embrace what you've put together. Thank you so much to everyone for coming over here today. It's been cool to get all 5 of us in the studio.
Yeah.
Next episode will be Theresa Lola. Myself and Jay will be interviewing her. Can we all say a big thank you to Chris Barn at Backland Studios?
Chris. We love you, Chris.
Happy to be back.
Big happy face from Chris in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to having you along for the rest of this. I've been Mark Grist. We've had Leanne Moden, Keely Mills, Charley Genever and Jay Sandhu in the studio. And thanks so much to Arts Council England for funding this series. We're excited to see where it goes. And finally, thank you so much for listening and joining us. It's gonna be a good one.